Abubakar Tafawa Balewa. Tafawa Balewa held the real power as Nigeria's first and only prime minister. Calm and widely respected, he guided Nigeria's early foreign policy and made the country a credible voice at the United Nations. Almost immediately after independence, he negotiated Nigeria's first major development loans from the UK, the World Bank, and Western powers. His administration was also riddled with allegations of nepotism, favoring northern Nigeria in federal appointments. He was murdered by coup plotters on January 15, 1966, ending the First Republic after just 6 years. Johnson Aguiyi Ironsi. Aguiyi Ironsi took power after the January 1966 coup as the most senior officer. The coup killed Prime Minister Balewa, Finance Minister Festus Okotie-Eboh, and the premiers of the northern and western regions, all non-Igbo. The coup plotters were predominantly Igbo actors. The ethnic selectivity of the killings inflamed the north. However, his Decree 34, which abolished federalism and created a unitary state, triggered massive protests in the north and led to the massacre of thousands of Igbo people. Mass flights of Igbo people from the north began under his tenure, a precursor to the Civil War. He was killed in a violent coup just 6 months after taking power. Yakubu Gowon. Yakubu Gowon, just 31 years old when he came to power, led Nigeria through his most devastating crisis, the Nigerian Civil War, which I'll get to in just a minute. Gowon was the first to create states from the old regions. He introduced 12 states in 1967. He introduced the Naira, replacing the Nigerian pound on January 1, 1973, at £1 equaling 2 Naira. However, his accomplishments were overshadowed by the multiple corruption scandals and, most importantly, the Nigerian Civil War. 30 months of conflict. His government used famine as a weapon, and amidst several reports of gruesome human rights violations on both sides, somewhere between 1 and 3 million people died. He was later overthrown while attending a summit abroad as corruption had consumed his government. Murtala Muhammed. Murtala Muhammed hit the ground running, dismissing thousands of corrupt officials within weeks. He carried out a mass purge of the civil service, dismissed over 10,000 officials within months. He reviewed and cancelled several wasteful contracts from the Gowon era, announced a detailed, credible timetable for return to civilian rule, and created a constitution drafting committee. He created 7 more states from 12 to 19 and declared Abuja the new federal capital. He was wildly popular and gave Nigeria a rare sense of national momentum. He was assassinated in a Lagos traffic jam during a failed coup after just 200 days in office. Olusegun Obasanjo. Olusegun Obasanjo succeeded Muhammad. He oversaw drafting of the 1979 Constitution, modeled on the US presidential system. What was well remembered the most, however, is that Obasanjo did what almost no African military ruler had done in the past. He willingly handed power to an elected civilian government in 1979. Shehu Shagari. Shehu Shagari became Nigeria's first elected executive president under a new American-style constitution, riding an oil boom that masked enormous structural problems. When global oil prices crashed, the economy unraveled rapidly and corruption ran rampant. The disastrous Operation Alien, the Ghana Must Go of 1983, expelled approximately 2 million undocumented West Africans, mostly Ghanaians, in 2 weeks with almost no notice. It was the largest mass expulsion in African history at the time. And perhaps worth mentioning is that many of Nigeria's present problems, including fuel scarcity, chronic corruption, and unstable currency valuation, started during his tenure. He was removed on New Year's Eve 1983 in a military coup. Muhammadu Buhari. Muhammadu Buhari launched a war against indiscipline, jailing politicians, purging the civil service, and gagging the press through his Decree 4. His government was austere, rigid, and deeply authoritarian. He jailed sitting state governors and senators en masse. His government enforced street cleaning, and residents were made to clean their neighborhoods on Saturday mornings. Government workers were penalized for lateness, and some made to do frog jumps publicly. He was overthrown by fellow generals after 2 years and would spend decades waiting for another chance. Ibrahim Babangida. Ibrahim Babangida was Nigeria's most cunning ruler. charming, politically brilliant, and utterly ruthless. His structural adjustment programs under IMF pressure deepened poverty sharply, while he sat on the IBB loot, estimated billions stashed abroad, almost never fully recovered. He organized what observers would call Nigeria's freest election ever in June 1993, then annulled the results when Moshood Abiola won. He stepped aside under pressure, leaving the country in chaos. Ernest Shonekan. Ernest Shonekan was installed as a civilian head of an interim national government with almost no real power. Abacha, as defense minister, controlled the military, and more so, Justice Dolapo Akisanya of the Lagos High Court had ruled that the ING, Shonekan's government, was illegal on November 10, 1993. Shonekan's government, whether ordered by him or forced on him by the military, raised petrol prices from 70 kobo to 5 naira in November 1993, a 614% overnight increase. This triggered mass protests and strikes. This single act may have accelerated his removal, as this emboldened Abacha to stage a coup on November 17, 1993. It lasted 83 days. Sani Abacha. Sani Abacha was Nigeria's most repressive leader. He jailed Moshood Abiola, the man the people had voted for, and imprisoned former head of state Obasanjo on dubious charges. He executed author and environmental activist Ken Saro-Wiwa in 1995, triggering international outrage and Nigeria's suspension from the Commonwealth. He looted an estimated $3 to $5 billion into foreign accounts. His list of political prisoners include MKO Abiola, held in solitary confinement for 4 years, Olusegun Obasanjo, former head of state, General Shehu Musa Yara'dua, chief of staff, Supreme Headquarters. He later died in prison in 1997. Kudirat Abiola, MKO Abiola's wife, Wole Soyinka, Beko Ransom Kuti, Femi Falana, and other activists were routinely jailed. Despite oil windfall, the economy collapsed, bringing with it the standard of living of many Nigerians. Basic necessity like electricity became a practical joke. Abacha died suddenly in 1998. Abdulsalami Abubakar. Abdulsalami Abubakar took power after Abacha's death and moved swiftly, releasing political prisoners, drafting a new constitution, and completing a transition to democracy in under 10 months. He handed power to an elected president peacefully, ending 16 years of military rule. Olusegun Obasanjo. Olusegun Obasanjo returned as Nigeria's first civilian president of the Fourth Republic. He created the EFCC, anti-corruption agency, and negotiated $18 billion in Paris Club debt relief. He liberalized telecommunications, bringing mobile phones to millions of Nigerians. However, his attempts to change the constitution for a third term was defeated in the Senate. Umaru Musa Yara'dua. Umaru Musa Yara'dua came in with a rule of law agenda and even publicly admitted his own election was flawed. His Niger Delta amnesty program ended years of military attacks on oil pipelines and stabilized oil production. He died in office in 2010 after a prolonged illness left Nigeria in a months-long constitutional crisis. Goodluck Jonathan. Jonathan oversaw the rebasing of Nigeria's GDP in 2019. That made it Africa's largest economy. But his years in office were also the years Boko Haram peaked, culminating in the abduction of 276 schoolgirls from Chibok in 2014 and the global Bring Back Our Girls crisis. He lost the 2015 election to Buhari. He is widely celebrated across the continent as proof that Nigerian democracy and peaceful transfer of power could work. Muhammadu Buhari. Muhammadu Buhari returned as elected president on an anti-corruption and security platform. The military degraded Boko Haram's territorial stronghold, but banditry and farmer-herder violence exploded across the northwest and killed more than Boko Haram ever had. The economy fell into recession twice, the naira collapsed, and a Twitter ban in 2021 drew widespread backlash. He left office in 2023 with far less goodwill than he had arrived with. Bola, Ahmed, Tinubu. Bola Tinubu, the political architect behind Buhari's 2015 victory, finally claimed the presidency for himself in 2023. On his first day in office, he removed the petroleum subsidy.
The fresh subsidy is gone,
sending fuel prices tripling overnight. He floated the naira, which lost roughly 70% of its value. The hashtag End Bad Governance protest in 2024, which was brutally suppressed, were the largest unrest since 2020, with life already exponentially harder for the common man than it was in previous years. Whether the economic pain produced by Tinubu's government creates the structural reform Nigeria needs, or just more pain for civilians, history is still deciding. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.